For those of us who can remember where we were when the terrorists flew planes into buildings on 9/11, it's interesting for me to reflect upon what I remember in the aftermath. Physically, everything went still. There were no planes in the skies. Millions of people stayed home. They were scared to go out. I remember hugging people a lot and often, everyone around me. There was also a sense of nationalism that came with the pride we felt for our country and the love we felt for the United States. That nationalism also developed negative viewpoints and violent actions toward those who looked like the terrorists. I'm going to give you a little bit of a background story. When I was in high school, the Iranian hostage crisis happened. And as a teenager, I was leery of the Iranian foreign exchange students who were at our school for no other reason than they were from Iran. And these students had nothing to do with the hostage crisis, but I still singled them out as the enemy, and I avoided them. Over time, with hindsight and wisdom, I realized I was wrongly stereotyping them and it shouldn't have happened. Flash forward to the aftermath of 9/11. When I began worrying about the reaction from Americans toward those of the Muslim faith, knowing of my personal reaction to students who were from Iran in high school and after the hostage crisis. I worried about the negative treatment that Muslims would receive, which actually happened. And today, instead of Americans uniting together, we're fighting against each other. We've lost so much in the 2 decades since 9/11.
So I think my reflection can only start with what was going on the day that it happened, since that was the day that everything changed, and everything since then has kind of just been a blur, even though it can be tied back to it. But it was when I was still in college, getting my graduate degree to be a teacher, and I actually worked at an insurance company that day, or not that day, but I was working at an insurance company. And for whatever reason on the 10th, I decided to call in sick, so I wasn't at work. And at the time, my wife and I deliberately made a choice not to have media in the house, so we didn't have a TV. And so it wasn't until my wife called me and said, "You should find out what's going on. Something's going on." And I went next door to my neighbor's house, who I'd really never interacted with before, and knocked on her door and just said, "Hey, is there something going on? Can I watch the TV with you?" And she just looked like I was a stranger, like she had never seen me before. And when I walked in and sat down and saw the towers falling and saw the reporters talking about what's going on, it was just a feeling of numbness. Like, it just, nothing like that had ever happened before. My generation had never seen a war start or seen the country attacked. So there was just no way to really process it. And I remember thinking that, everything that I understood about people was just not right anymore. And ironically, the next day when I did go back into work, the first joke that I was going to lead off with was, "Thank goodness I didn't come into work yesterday. I bet you guys didn't sell a single policy." And everyone was like, "Oh no," everyone called freaking out. There was, no sales pitch. Everyone wanted everything insured. Everyone was panicking that everything was going to be lost, and they wanted to make sure they would get insurance money for it that day. So again, just like totally disrupting how people normally think. And then as I'm holding on to that, and we move a little bit further into the future, when we see Congress meeting and trying to approve the authorization to go to war, and just not having a good justification for it. It just felt like we had to go to war because someone attacked us, and it didn't matter who it was, but we were going to go attack them. And I remember there was just one senator, Barbara Boxer, who just was the only dissenting voice in all the Senate. And it, again, like, you think you understand people, and there's normally some dissent and discussion. To see that there's only one person that was up there and having the courage to stand up and say, this isn't the right thing to do. We're opening a whole bunch of rights and committing to a whole bunch of, attacks against another country that we just don't know enough about right now. We're rushing into this. And so just flash forward to now with our country finally leaving Afghanistan. It's just really hard. Again, like you think you understand how people operate and how a society moves one way or another. And here we are, and we've left a war that we had not a clear picture of why we were going to it. And again, even after leaving it, it's just like, what did we accomplish and what are we going to do now?
9/11, 2001, 20 years ago, I had been here about 10 years and was teaching in this classroom. And a colleague came in who had driven to school that day, and he heard on the news that an airplane had accidentally flown into the World Trade Tower. And we all, of course, were surprised, although this sort of thing had happened before with tall buildings being flown into. I can't remember at what point the TV was set up, but Deb Prantle was a math teacher here, and in her classroom there was a TV set up, and we watched the tower burning, and I am pretty sure we watched live the second tower being hit. And when the second tower was hit, it was very clear that it wasn't an accident. And I remember we just sort of couldn't get our heads around it, though. Why would you intentionally do such a thing? And as a parent, even though we were thousands of miles away from New York City, we had 2 young daughters, and I remember wanting to hold them tight and wanting to be near them. And in fact, my wife and I took them out to dinner that night, and there was this eerie subtext to dinner and atmosphere. In my classes, every 9/11 anniversary, I would have students write about their memories of that day and their experiences and thoughts. And it has been fascinating and humbling to watch time recede. Because of course, for the first few years, kids had very vivid memories of where they were and their emotions. And some had lost relatives or knew people who had lost relatives. But as time went on, of course, the kids were younger and younger. And a few years ago, it was, I remember my mother being upset and me being taken out of school. And of course, as of officially a couple of years ago, there was no memory of it from my sophomores or seniors. And to watch experiences that we have lived through recede and disappear from the students' minds, I don't know how I'm saying that, but is to me a sort of lesson in history. And you realize that the elders hold these powerful memory banks of real experiences because it was something we lived through, and that students from now on, it's only something that they're reading in a history book or a textbook or an article, and I viscerally remember it. And so that's been interesting and somber. Of course, it's a reminder that I'm growing old, but it's also, you think about, the last people who remember World War II or Auschwitz or anything. Where were you when JFK was shot? Where were you when the moon landing occurred? And of course, I don't remember JFK being shot, but I do vaguely remember the moon landing. Anyways, that's been a very interesting thing to think about and live through. And I don't know. Of course, Biden pulled us out of Afghanistan just recently and has come under some attack for that. And I think the timing is very, in a way, symbolic, 20 years anniversary. I feel like in some ways the world has changed. Certainly travel has changed, airplane travel has changed, but the concept of terrorism and the concept of the randomness, because here, the people who died were not soldiers. They had no relationship to politics in any sense of a direct way. And they were targeted and killed. And that sort of randomness of terror is a very frightening thing. And it reminds me a little bit, we read The Things They Carried this summer, and which focuses on the Vietnam War, and we talk about the essential difference between Vietnam and World War II, that in World War II we had a clear and obvious enemy, and in Vietnam the enemy was communism and the spread of communism. And that when you are attacking an idea, it's an amorphous thing and very hard to attack and hard to kill and hard to also get behind. And I think terrorism is like that as well.
When I think back on that day, there are two things that really come front and center for me. I remember being present and comforting an advisee whose father was unaccounted for a good part of the day, and the fear and uncertainty, and at the same time the hope and the optimism that he displayed. He was a senior, and I was very proud of him in the way in which he handled that. Fortunately, not until probably about 6:30 or 7 o'clock that night did we receive confirmation that his father was okay. We had other students at our school who were in the same boat, and we were fortunate that our school was untouched in that manner, although there were many who were there in the midst of it. Luckily, all had their lives. A piece that really stands out for me as I think back about that period of time for me and for our world is the way in which our country came together in a supportive manner, in a caring manner. While there was anger, there wasn't the level of extreme hatred. While there was a desire for accountability, there wasn't a focus on extreme violence. And I think back during that very difficult time, it also brought out the best in so much of our world and so much of our humanity, and in particular in our country. As we fast forward to today, I worry about the way in which that event is memorialized and leveraged for actions of hatred and for inappropriateness, and the way in which it's twisted into a catalyst and an excuse for doing irresponsible and really horrible things to fellow members of humanity. And I wish we could remember and honor the lives, the many lives who were lost in the best way, and not use their death as an agenda item to move forward something that's disingenuous and not representative of, in particular, the core values of Fountain Valley School, but also of our society and of our world.